$5.2 billion. That's the total amount of Bitcoin payments that have been linked to the top 10 strains of ransomware in 2021 alone. By the end of the year, there will have been over 700 million attempted ransomware attacks. That's over 1,300 attacks every minute, or 22 attacks per second. It's madness, and it's growing. This year we're up 150%. This all got me thinking. Who or what kicked off this flourishing industry? Who knocked over the first proverbial domino that has led to the absolute state of ransomware in 2021? I want to know. To explore the first known case of ransomware, we have to turn back the clock to 1989. It all began when people started receiving floppy disks in the mail, in particular the 5¼ variety. Now, these things are ancient, and even compared to a CD, they're massive. Specifically, these were being sent to AIDS researchers. At the time, the AIDS epidemic was peaking. The floppy disks were accompanied by a set of written instructions. How quaint. Please find enclosed a computer diskette containing health information on the disease AIDS. The information is provided in the form of an interactive computer program. The program provides recommendations to you based on the life history that you have provided about practical steps that you can take to reduce your risk of getting AIDS. All looks fairly legit, I suppose. There's nothing here to arouse suspicion per se, and the program itself worked as expected. But, unbeknownst to the user, malware was dropped on the victim machine, malware known as a logic bomb. A logic bomb is malicious code that stays dormant until a certain condition is met. The condition in this case being 90 reboots. In other words, nothing would happen until the computer had been switched off and on 90 times. On the 90th boot, the user would be completely locked out of their computer, just like in normal modern ransomware. Victims found themselves staring down the barrel of the world's first ransomware note. And it seems old habits die hard, as some modern ransomware strains will still use a basic TXT file for their ransomware note. Apart from just preventing the victim from using their PC, it also encrypted the names of all the files on the disk and set those files to hidden. Now, I realise that doesn't sound that bad, as only the file names were encrypted rather than the contents of those files themselves, so whilst it was possible to undo the damage if you knew what you were doing, it was also 1989. You couldn't just Google these things. And realistically speaking, most of the victims were kinda screwed. The note said, "It is time to pay for your software lease from PC Cyborg Corporation." Of course, no such corporation exists. The note went on to say you could pay for a year's license for $189 or a lifetime license at $378. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $850 in today's money. The next bit kind of made me laugh. Of course, modern ransomware almost exclusively asks for ransoms to be paid in cryptocurrency, but this wasn't an option in 1989, so the malware asks for the next best thing, a check, sent to a Panamanian PO box. In return, the victim would be sent a floppy disk with software to unblock the PC. The January 1990 issue of Virus Bulletin had a lot to say about this malware, which was just given the name the AIDS Trojan, because of course the term ransomware didn't exist back then. In analysing the malware, the author of the article had no idea he was describing a soon-to-be multi-billion-dollar industry when he said, "The conception is ingenious and extremely devious." However, his awe at this creation stops there. The actual programming is quite untidy. What follows is simply amazing, and what I can only assume is the 1990 equivalent of calling someone a noob. The programmer was unfamiliar with the capabilities of Quick Basic 3.0 and not particularly well schooled in general program construction. It turns out that 20,000 AIDS researchers had received these floppy disks in the mail, which is quite remarkable when you realise just how much an operation like that costs. A floppy disk in 1989 was about $1.50, and I am guessing somewhat as I couldn't find a definitive answer on the Googles. 20,000 floppy disks would have set you back about $30,000. In today's money, that's $70,000. After you factor in postage, it gets even more expensive, and then you've got to find the time to package up all those floppy disks. Someone went to great expense and great lengths to do all of this, and to target AIDS researchers, it just doesn't add up. Besides, this wasn't a harmless prank. One of the victims explained in an interview the incident created a lot of damage. People lost a lot of work. Knowing their computers had been infected, some scientists even preemptively deleted valuable data. And I realise it doesn't make sense to do that, but you have to understand people just didn't know what they were up against. The world's first MS-DOS virus had only come out 3 years beforehand, and computers in of themselves were just such an enigma, people didn't know what to do. In fact, one AIDS organisation in Italy lost 10 years of work. However, when it comes to that PO box, it turns out that even Panamanian PO boxes are not immune to traceability. Police hunted down the perp to be one Joseph Pop. Now, this wasn't just some kiddo trying to make some cash. Joseph Pop was an evolutionary biologist. He even got his PhD from Harvard. Not the most archetypal hacker, I bet he never even wore a hoodie in his life. Since no victims were located in the US, he was extradited to the UK to stand trial. And by the way, if you're looking for some kind of a reason as to why he made the Trojan, I have no definitive answers. The best theory is that he was just super salty about being rejected for a job at the WHO. In fact, the 20,000 researchers which were sent the malware came from a list of attendees of the WHO conference in Stockholm a year earlier. As for our hacker, Joseph Pop, he was never actually tried for his crimes. There are reports from the time, and get ready for this, that he was observed putting curlers in his beard and condoms on his nose in order to ward off radiation. Oh, and in my search for stock footage of condoms on noses, apparently snorting condoms is a trend, which I did not need to be made aware of. Anyway, either he had a screw loose or this was all a ruse to look as crazy as possible to avoid a harsh sentence. Either way, the judge ruled he was mentally unfit to stand trial and he was deported back to America. We don't know if anyone actually ended up paying the ransom, but a program to clean up the Trojan called AIDS Out was made freely available. Joseph Pop died in 2007, but not before setting up a butterfly conservatory of all things, which has some mixed reviews. Regardless, his legacy as the father of ransomware was cemented the day he mailed out that first floppy disk. This video is sponsored by Linode, who are giving you $100 worth of free cloud computing. Linode is a totally customizable cloud hosting platform. Whether you're looking to quickly spin up a VPN, website, or host a Kubernetes cluster, Linode has you covered. If it runs on Linux, it'll run on Linode. Linode just announced availability of their NVMe block storage, the first alternative cloud provider to officially support this state-of-the-art hardware at no extra cost to their customers. Linode's philosophy is to focus on providing all the tools a developer really needs at competitive prices. Use the link in the description now to claim your free $100. If you enjoy this kind of video, make sure to help me out by mutilating the like button for the YouTube AI, as well as turning on them sub notifications. If you want to see what goes on behind the scenes, make sure to follow me on the Instagrams. I'm at Jonty, I will of course link it in the description. And if you're looking for something to watch next, go check out my previous video on the top 5 non-ransomware related hacks of 2021. As always, sources will be linked in the video description. Stay tuned for more hacking videos, and have a good one.